Dear friends, welcome to this online gathering from Helsingborg to Ankara on NATO and militarization, protecting welfare. We are tonight gathering many different people from all continents, or more or less, from Asia, Africa, Latin America, North America, and Europe, and all kinds of movements, to have a gathering where we shortly exchange experiences and have a discussion together with the participants on how to move forward. We are very pleased to have with us the spokesperson for the demonstration held in Helsingborg this Saturday with some 1,000 people, and the message was very clear. No to NATO, we are against your militarization, welfare, not weapons, and NATO out of Sweden. That was a broad range of movements coming together, including my own local chapter of my own organization, Friends of the Earth. So it was pleasant to see all the Palestinians waving the banners and the peace movements of different kinds and left organizations coming together, bridging the gaps between issues and moving forward. This was a special occasion because it was the first NATO summit in Sweden after Sweden became members some years ago. It was an informal, so-called informal foreign ministerial meeting, and it takes place today and tomorrow under a lot of police protection, of course. So we also have Turkish organizers with us, which is especially of interest, as the actual NATO summit will take place in Ankara in July, but also the climate summit in Antalya later in November. And we are pleased to have both peace organization with us here organizing protests in Istanbul and the military hub in the climate summit preparations. So what we have is also a lot of others, and we will introduce them one by one. And we will have 2 sessions, and then we will have some discussions with the audience and between them, and then we will have a second session. And we will begin the first session with a special guest, I would say, Jackson Kisangani. He's from Eastern Congo, in the midst of some of the worst war crisis zones on Earth. And as many of us maybe have heard, this is the worst wars going on since the Second World War. As far as I know, Jackson knows, of course, much, much better. Some 5 million people have been killed so far. And that was some figure for some years ago. What is happening there is that a lot of young activists, not only in Congo, but also in the neighboring countries in East Africa, have caught up on this idea, peace and climate justice. And established meetings and collecting signatures behind a platform called Peace and Climate Justice, translated into Swahili, French, nowadays also to Hindi, Telugu, Bengali. So please, Jackson, if you are not wanted to add something more, Anna Chiara, I think you could say something. No? Or later that. So please, Jackson, take the floor.
Thank you, Salt. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, it's so dark in the room. In that I can't stand on my camera. My internet connection keeps dropping out, but I'll give it a go. I would like to sincerely thank you for this invitation and this opportunity for international dialogue. My name is Jackson Kisangani. I come from Goma in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. I am an activist for peace and climate justice, co-founder of PCG Africa, and a member of Lucha RDC. Today, I would like to draw attention to a reality that is often overlooked: armed conflicts Militarization and geopolitical interests are significantly exacerbating environmental destruction and human suffering in Africa. While military alliances such as NATO invest billions in militarization, African communities continue to pay the price. In Eastern DRC, people have been living for years with violence, forced displacements, and the illegal exploitation of natural resources. Behind many conflicts lie interests linked to strategic minerals used in the global economy. Um, face with this situation, we refuse to remain silent. At Peace and Climate Justice Africa, we work with young people, women, and local communities to raise awareness of climate change, promote peace, organize reforestation activities, and encourage sustainable solutions. Through Lucha RDC, Lutte pour le changement in French, we also carry out non-violent civic actions to defend human rights and defend greater justice and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. And you were really on time. So we can have some chat between us as well. So now the second speaker is Anuradha Shenoy, prominent in all discussions, more or less, about the world order, and of course, especially also with a peace perspective, member of the International Peace Bureau, and I think very nice that she is willing to make a short intervention, which of course is totally impossible when you know so much. But you're most welcome, Anu.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And what I'm going to speak about is how I see the changes going on internationally and geopolitically in NATO and the international system, especially the United States. Now, I think we all know that the United States is seeking to retain its primacy when other powers are rising, and there has been a redistribution of power, worldwide, with even smaller countries, as you can see with Iran, being able to exercise agency. So what the US is actually doing, which I'm noticing, is that it is restructuring its own foreign policy and NATO. Because the main security theater now for them is the Indo-Pacific. And as the US has moved, and you can see that with the Trump visit to China, not only is that the main insecurity theater for them, you can see that there has been a strategic parity between China and the US. And therefore, in this last meeting, the last 2-3 days ago, the position which has emerged of the US is strategic coexistence and managed competition with China. But at the same time, because the US wants to share its defense burden in Europe on the issue of Ukraine, etc., it is now restructuring from the old system to a very dispersed network, where it is integrating extraction lines, production lines, value chains with all countries, from whether it's Europe and their Asian allies, so that they're able to integrate these economies with their own and extract surpluses directly. So at the same time, so the structural shift involves diversifying from the earlier hubs and spoke alliance approach, while transiting to a more denser network structure where US power will be dispersed to overlapping networks in NATO and outside NATO with, let's say, Germany, England, France, etc. And you can see that with the deindustrialization of Germany and the movement of capital from Europe into the US, and similarly from Japan, Australia, Argentina, UAE, India, and others. So these would be the main connectors. So within the US, there is an economic nationalism for itself, looking inwards, but for NATO, the security threat and the rhetoric about the threat of Russia and China remains so that to keep their allies together and in order for weaponization and militarization. But as Todd said in the beginning, NATO is also diversifying. It's talking about climate, it's talking about gender, it's talking about co-opting women. So, but at the same time, all allies also see that the US itself failed to protect their own allies during the Gulf War or protect its partners. So, therefore, NATO is doing this kind of changed conversation and narrative, but at the same time, it's going to be the same neoliberal militarized capital and sale of US weapons. Therefore, my last point that the anti-NATO united front is very important for them to both organize and change the popular common sense, to have an intersectional narrative, to connect the dots, to show what NATO is doing and how it is transiting, and what international capital and its whole weaponization and militarization and what kind of impact is having on people, on countries, on different people, and on movements. And therefore, our narrative has to be one to have a common sense from war to peace, peace as social justice, as gender justice, to a common sense of the importance of diversity, plurality, and freedoms for all. Because no one person can have freedoms if others remain oppressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anu and Jackson. You both really pointed at this specific need now to address the issues in a little bit outside the silos, sort of. Strategic minerals are important in Congo, yeah, but that's exactly what you talk about also with these US deals. And you were able to see how all the dots actually start to be brought together. This is precisely what's happening in Sweden also with so-called Pax Silica, which now environmentalists react to, where the US wants to use the strategic minerals in Sweden for the tech companies in US. So we are really facing a new situation. Thank you very much for doing it so precisely. So Pia Jakobsen from the Communist Party, but mainly a spokesperson for the Stop NATO Now. So please take the floor.
So this NATO meeting held in Helsingborg now, these 2 days, is the first one in Sweden, once the parliament decided to join the war alliance. So it's a miserable warmongering gathering of politicians, of course, surrounded by arms lobbyists and the capitalistic military industry, who are just going to crank up the war rhetoric and cash in on it. And I would say that a lot of us in Sweden still want disarmament and dialogue and peace, of course, and we know that it's possible through grassroots organization and issue-based cooperation, working together between different organizations across different groups. So Sweden has a long history of people movements, from the working class fighting for democracy in the late 1800s to women groups and peace organization and climate activists. And that's why there is potentially so many groups that we can reach out to now in our resistance against NATO. 38 of them, these organizations, recently formed a network, and a network is a quite common way of executing work once we find an issue-based ground. And the network called stoppanato.nu, stopnato.now. And together we organized the protest last Saturday, as Tord said, May 16th. And I had the great privilege of being the spokesperson for the network and the demonstration itself. And we also marched then under the slogans, Get NATO out of Sweden, Sweden out of NATO, welfare, not weapons, and we refuse your militarization. Those of us who want the peaceful, respectful development of society for humanity and the environment have to rise above the accusations thrown at us that we are naive, Putin huggers, or even plain stupid. We rise above this by organizing for a different world, because imperialist bomb never liberated anyone, and the working class must not pay for this. So I would like to say to keep up the fight, say no to NATO and the DCA bases in Sweden, no to sending our young people off to war, no to tax money being funneled from welfare to the military war. And to be a voice for peace, we need to bring back non-alignment. That also means leaving the increasingly militarized EU, which is heading completely in the wrong direction under the power elites regime. So stop arms exporting to war zones, ban nuclear weapons. Sweden's foreign and security policy should be based on non-alignment in peacetime, aiming for neutrality in war, because our tax money should go to welfare, not weapons, as it is right now. They also want to borrow money for even more money to the military. Thank you.
Thank you, Pia. And that is then a good stepping stone towards Istanbul and Turkey. Firut Tane, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, so please. Now the next organizer of protest events, please inform us. No to NATO Turkey.
Hi everyone, I'm Firuze, one of the people who helped organizing the No to NATO initiative from Turkey. So this initiative was formed following a call by the Workers' Party of Turkey and brings together leftist organizations, artists, academics, trade unionists, anti-war activists, and people from other social movements such as like women's movements, student movements, etc. Our aim is to organize a counter summit in Istanbul against the NATO summit in Ankara this year in July, and to strengthen the international solidarity against militarism, imperialism, and war. So the NATO summit happening in Turkey this year, we think cannot be considered a coincidence, and the situation in Turkey cannot be separated from what's happening in the rest of the world. So today, Erdogan government plays a very big role together with Trump and Netanyahu and their regional allies, of course, in deepening the dynamics of war and militarization across the Middle East. And Turkey here occupies a very strategic position within NATO. Military bases, infrastructure in Turkey play a very important role in the operations across the West Asia and the Eastern Mediterranean. But at the same time, of course, ordinary people in Turkey are facing a very deep economic and social crisis. So while the government increases military budgets and allocate more resources to war policies, workers and young people, especially in Turkey, are struggling very much with inflation, poverty, and increasing debt. So the security excuses, I totally agree with Anuradha here. The security excuse directly work to hide the deepening inequalities, while the small wealthy elite fills their pockets, basically. So unsurprisingly, the expansion of militarism strengthens authoritarianism in Turkey as well, like in other parts of the world. And it redirects basically the public resources away from healthcare, housing, other social welfare instruments toward military spending. This is why we're organizing this counter summit in Istanbul on the 4th of July this year, with possibly demonstrations taking place the next day. And from here, I would like to make the call open to all of you. We invite all peace organizations and activists, trade unions, researchers, and social movements to join us in this counter summit taking place in Istanbul this July. And we also ask you to circulate the call within your organizational and political networks if possible. That's all from me for now. Thank you, and hopefully to see some of you in Istanbul in July. I'm also adding the link to the chat if any one of you would like to look up. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Firuz. And well, at coming together from Helsingborg to Istanbul, we'll see if we get there. I'm informed, but I see very little here, so I'm informed that Ismail is actually here already from El Salvador. Is that correct? Están aquí, Ismael Ortiz. Bienvenido en esta online gathering. Nosotros quieren saber sobre la lucha de los migrantes en El Salvador, en América Central, en relación también con la militarización.
Bueno.
Ok, muy castellano y muy mal.
Bueno, estamos en un grupo de trabajo en Centroamérica, donde fundamentalmente está ligado a los derechos humanos y la dignidad para migrar. Somos un grupo de iglesias históricas y de universidades y académicos que estamos trabajando en cómo construir alternativas a las migraciones en términos socioeconómicos, culturales, y que permitan que como derecho humano, que es migrar, pueda tener un significado real para las poblaciones que no encuentran alternativas en sus países y terminan migrando. Entonces,
para. We are part of a network which consists of different churches in Central America, and we want to, as our name says, to dignify migration as an alternative to the repression we are suffering all over the world. Sí.
En esa perspectiva, hemos construido varios foros que hemos abordado a profundidad las razones, las tipologías de las migraciones en Centroamérica, ¿no? Y ahora estamos construyendo, digamos, desde la parte académica y formativa, una serie de propuestas que permitan a los que ya retornaron o los que están en proceso de arraigo en territorios que no son sus países, puedan construir una perspectiva.
Based on analysis of what the reasons for migrations are, we developed a concept around the term of arraigo. In English, it's rootedness. So to find a dignified way of living in another environment than the environment they are accustomed to.
Finalmente, la perspectiva de crear una red en Centroamérica y México era para poder construir perspectivas que permitieran a la gente que emigraba una alternativa que fundamentalmente que la migración sea con dignidad humana y no como hasta ahora ha sido y sigue siendo un tema de persecución política.
We are in Central America and in Mexico trying to find this place where migration can be a part of human dignity and not a subject of persecution like it is now more than ever.
Esa es la perspectiva del grupo de trabajo
This is
que hay
the
múltiples
perspective of
factores.
the working group.
Podíamos seguir aumentando las capacidades de la resiliencia también en procesos académicos y que las comunidades puedan tener perspectivas distintas de desarrollo.
Yeah. In order to help this rootedness, it is necessary to make a link between academic grounds, the universities, and the communities of migrants.
Por el momento sería esa perspectiva.
It's this perspective we are working on. That's all for the moment.
Thank you very much. Gracias, muchas gracias. And this points to what Anuradha stated as well, that the issues becomes more and more connected. Personally, I think that the migrant issue is really one of the least addressed issues, which is utterly important. I think both the peace movement and the climate movement are really missing this as a key part of what's going on in the present world order. So I'm very pleased that you could participate, Ismail. Now, Janne Kortobius from the Network Peace and Climate Justice in Sweden will talk. And yeah.
Okay, I'm a member of the Swedish peace organization, Swedish Peace and Arbitration Society. It's the biggest peace organization in Sweden, and also a member of this network, Peace and Climate Justice. And I want to present a proposal, an initiative that we are discussing now in our network and with other organizations. We are going to have a meeting on Monday where we're going to decide it, but I think I can present it now so you can think about it and see what how you if you see the same picture as we do. I will read it in English, and this is the initiative. It sounds like this: Time for International Days of Action for Peace on Earth. Peace with Earth. Never before in human history has our common future been so threatened as it is now. We are now seeing increasingly severe environmental, climate, and war destruction in the world. An increasing threat of total annihilation in the form of nuclear war. Warmongering, massive military buildup, and trade wars that create fear and increased international conflicts. Our societies are being torn apart by increased inequality and dismantled democracy. Children and young people who are completely losing hope in the adult world's ability and willingness to reverse the development and stop the catastrophe. Now we need all popular movements, religious communities, and civil organizations of all kinds around the world to come together and demonstrate collectively to build a global movement for humanity, solidarity, and justice. We who fight daily and believe in the inherent human will to do good for each other, we must now take the responsibility for the future of our children and grandchildren that our economic and political leaders refuse to take. Peace, as well as an end to the arms race and warmongering, are absolutely necessary if we are to achieve international cooperation for the climate, the environment, social welfare, and democracy. Therefore, we propose joint recurring international days of action around the unifying positive slogan and vision of peace on earth, peace with earth. And this initiative is the idea of it is that to bring it to Brussels, where it's going to be 2 big conferences on the 14th and 15th of June. It is Stop Rearm Europe, who are having a big demonstration the same day, and then the conference in the evening. And it's European Common Space of Alternatives. They are having a conference the day after, it's Sunday and Monday. And the idea is that we will try to gather as many Swedish organizations behind this proposal and an initiative, and try to send people down to Brussels and to present it to these both conferences, and hope for support for this idea. So I just want to have your reaction about it, and I have now I've presented the initiative and idea, and I'm very keen on to hear what do you think of this idea. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Janne, and we are on time. The proposal is also now in the chat to read. One could add a little detail, and Anu Rada spoke about intersectionality. We actually, in our platform for this peace and climate justice, address it very differently. We talk about that we are addressing those working in the fields, forests, fisheries, industry, in the service sector, the care work, both at home and in the institutions. And what you see here is a clear, very specific understanding of making the rural economy equally important as the urban economy, because we cannot eat money, we cannot eat weapons. It doesn't matter if farmers are very many or if there are very few. They are still equally important as the urban population. And this is a very basic, important understanding when we want to address the kind of total crisis we have in the world right now. But this means that we are precisely on time. Wow, my bureaucratic Swedish mind gets very happy. So now it's time for 10 minutes questions and answers. So anyone can jump in if they want to speak. Comment. And you know, the rule is very simple. First, you try to let the participants say something, and then you can sort of talk also in the panel. And if they don't jump up and say something, then I'm quite for certain that the panel is willing to interfere. I don't see anybody hand. Oh yes, there is one. Birgitta Hedström, please. Agneta Norberg, please take the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much for letting me to say something very short. I'm in the board of directors against nuclear weapons in space. Nuclear weapons, yes, no, it's a long title, but anyhow, I always, whenever I am, urge all organizations, all manifestations, everything to not exclude space as the arena where all wars are fought. That's what I wanted to say. And now with this president, Donald Trump, he has pointed out the importance of space war in using space assets for war. And the last thing I want to say is that Sweden is very, very long ahead of all when it comes to militarization of space. I refer to that billions and billions and billions are put into S-range, one of the world's, some say the world's biggest downloading station from satellites. So that is what I wanted to add, if it would be possible in any writings to bring space warfare in a sentence. Thank you.
Thank you, Agneta. That's really, warfare is really developed in all scales nowadays, in all levels. It's open to anyone to address, also comment each other. Mariam.
Hi, my name is Mariam from Wealth Canada. I have a question for Feroz. I'm curious about how is it like protesting against NATO and militarism in Turkey? How is the reaction from the state? And yeah, how do you feel about that?
Well, should I just respond, or are we gonna collect the question?
Yes. We have still 6 minutes, so let's be dynamic.
Historically, I would say not an anti-NATO movement has been very strong, other than the left-wing organizations, but anti-Americanism has really strong roots. So I would say, yes, there are some protests. There will be some more protests organized like throughout the end of May and in June. But as the NATO summit itself gets closer by, definitely the repression and the possible police violence will also be increasing for sure. But we know that they won't even let a bird fly, basically, in Ankara when the week of the NATO summit will come. So that's one of the reasons why we are organizing our own counter summit in Istanbul. But yes, definitely some large collaborations are going on, starting with as soon as we learned that the summit would take place in Turkey this year. But yeah, repression and police violence is also a reality.
Okay, then I see Sippo Kemi, and what this organization TAM is, I don't know, but please present yourself and your question.
Yes, hello. My organization is the Working Class Anti-Militarists of Finland. And my question is to the Stoppa NATO Nu and the No to NATO in Ankara. How could these two work together so that we could actually have this progression from these demonstrations and these counter summits into an actual movement that would span Europe? And I would like to have our organization with something like that, but I think we are very fragmented. I think we have a lot of different anti-NATO networks and groups, and we're only now starting to find each other. So I think we need to take steps to maybe have a joint statement or something like that. I'm interested in hearing your opinions on that. How could they work together? Thanks.
That was a perfect question related to the title as well. So please, both Pia and Feruza.
Well, I could say something first. And the thing is that the resistance is fragmented, and that's a problem, and that's what they want us to have, a fragmented resistance. So, and also democracy takes time. And that's one thing that we have to have in our minds. So, but I think one thing that I did together with two other leaders of other parties, since I'm a member of the Communist Party of Sweden also, I did make a Nordic, declaration, one can say, for peace. And that was posted both in Denmark, Sweden and Norway. So, and that's one way to get people to read the same statement from us, and also having this kind of gathering is very important, I think. And of course, if I or anyone else that I know has the possibility to go to Ankara, we will, and we have to meet also in person, because that's very important to recognize each other in person. That's what I wanted to say at first. So Feruza, please.
I fully agree, cannot add basically nothing, but we're also, of course, fully open to the idea of doing some common statements, and we definitely should be staying in contact for any future work together, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was actually a very good part of this question and answer, and maybe we should go on to next session and then have more time for in the final end. then is the question if I pronounce Mariam Fure right. Please, Women's for International League of Peace and Freedom in Canada, and Wilf have been with us since 1915. So
Yes.
Please take the floor.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, my name is Mariam Fure, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom Canada. Our core message is simple. Militarism does not create lasting peace. Governments are spending billions on weapons and military expansions, while ordinary people struggle with housing costs, healthcare access, rising tuition, food insecurity, and climate disaster. We believe real security comes from investing in people and communities. NATO countries have played a major role in the Ukraine war by providing weapons, military aid, intelligence support, and training. We believe that this war has accelerated the global militarization and normalized long-term military expansion, while diplomatic solutions receive far less attention. In fact, diplomatic solutions are not even being considered. NATO has also expanded troops deployments in military readiness in Eastern Europe. NATO is responsible for this war not ending. Long-term peace requires ceasefire, diplomacy, negotiations, and demilitarization, and addressing the geopolitical conditions that contribute to this conflict. We are demanding an audit of the $25 billion that Canada has given to Ukraine for this war. Canada has continued increasing military spending under NATO commitments and pressure to raise defense budget towards 2%, which it has met this year, and now aiming to reach 5% of our GDP to go towards the military. Much of our education and healthcare and climate action and employment within our national budget has been cut and moved that money towards major defense contractors and specifically American weapons manufacturers rather than towards public services that Canadians rely on. And this will translate to every NATO country, in my opinion. Every budget reflects priorities. Billions for fighter jets and weapons contracts means fewer for affordable housing and education and for workers. Militaries are the largest institutional consumers of fossil fuels. War destroys ecosystems, contaminates water, damages infrastructure, and contributes significantly to climate catastrophe. Climate change and anti-militarism are deeply connected, and so I'm happy that there's climate groups here as well. On March 4th and 5th, political and military and corporate elites gathered in Ottawa to promote military expansion on long-term war economy. Behind closed doors, they have normalized massive increase in defense spending, while communities continue struggling with underfunded social services and raising inequalities. We led a protest which gathered hundreds of Canadians who opposed this conference and demanded that our tax dollars fund people over profit. This was good. Much of these warmongers have recognized that they can get extra pocket money if they betray their people and the planet and associate themselves with weapons contractors. People like Chrystia Freeland have encouraged the continuation of the Ukraine war, arguing that this will be a long-term beneficial to Canadians so that we can, quote unquote, more easily go to war with Iran and China and Russia. However, last I checked, none of these countries threaten Canadians. We believe that military alliances often escalate tensions rather than resolve the root cause of conflict, which is colonialism and resource exploitation. We must remember that these wars that we are funding are not for our security. They are literally for the pockets of corporate elites. I find it incredibly strange and hypocritical that these liberal politicians everywhere claim that they hate Donald Trump and that they oppose everything about him, and yet they endorse American wars and they have dramatically increased their contributions to American military since he has become president again. This is very shameful. We need to ask ourselves what exactly keeps people safe. Is it endless military expansion, or is it housing? Is it healthcare, education, and climate stability? At WILF, we believe human security must come before militarism. Peace is not passive. peace requires organizing, solidarity, and challenging systems that profit violence and war. We recognize that normalization of endless war and austerities and continued fighting for a world that prioritizes human dignity over corporate profit. And I'm so proud to be in this space today with active citizens of the world who are fighting for us all. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I think all of us felt very strongly. You really put it in a very strong way. Yeah. We had 2 trade unions invited, one for rural small farmers and CGIL from the center, the biggest trade union in Italy. But I haven't seen any messages, and I don't see that Sergio Basole is in here. So the other trade union, Via Campesina, who is really big at the global level, equally big as the International Trade Union of Confederation, but now not so huge in Sweden, but still very important, as we see in Friends of the Earth, a sort of very important organization when it comes to linking the issues and understanding the realities, which we are now facing very, very more and more clearly when the Hormuz Strait is closed and we start to worry not only about fuel, but also food. Please, Maximilian Isendal, take the floor.
Hello, thank you. And thank you also to all previous speakers. I should just say, I cannot say that I represent all of La Via Campesina. I don't really have that mandate. Honestly, I don't even know if I can represent Nordburg, my Swedish, because as someone said, democracy takes time, and I haven't had the time to check with the board. But I can say some things about the food sovereignty movement and La Via Campesina. So yes, Todd, as you said, it's globally a very big movement, about over 200 million members, and it consists of about 190 organizations in about 90 different countries around the world. Not just farmers, but also farm workers and indigenous peoples, fishers and foresters and so on. Yes. And also to clarify, if you don't have heard about it, it was formed in the early 90s as a response to neoliberalism, especially the World Trade Organization and also the IMF and World Bank and so on. And also to work for something positive, that is food sovereignty. So basically the people's rights to the means of food production, such as land and seeds and fair prices and so on. And we have a good, strong solidarity and internal cooperation in La Via Campesina. And I remember especially it was 3 years ago we had an international conference, the latest international conference in Bogota in Colombia, and it was a very strong message about no to all imperialism and colonialism. I think we have a good strong support for anti-imperialist struggles, especially where we have our sister organizations, for example, in countries that are affected very much, like Palestine and Cuba and Venezuela and Niger and so on, Congo. As you also said, Todd, our organization is extremely small, so I should not try to make it too big. But for our part, we were also created in the 90s. It was in our situation most concretely as a response to neoliberalism as imposed by the Swedish government. But the argument was that we need to do these changes because we need to join the EU. So we have always had a very strong anti-EU critique in its at EU at its core, neoliberal foundation. And now when we also see that the EU is has been mentioned that it is becoming more militaristic, it's such a strong connection to NATO, and it's very natural, I think, also for us to be against NATO. And I don't know if we have actually sat down and had made that decision. And unfortunately, we're not part of the 38 organizations at Stoppa NATO, but personally, I think we should join it if that is something that is still constructive. But yeah, no decision on that yet, sorry. And also, just to make the connection also very clear, this militarization, of course, it affects also rural areas and all of society, of course, and food production a lot. Not only farmers, but also the indigenous people. For example, in Sweden, we have for example, the reindeer herders and the land that is under threat for this hunt of critical raw materials that is also in Sweden. And that is also exacerbated by the EU policies like the Green Deal. Then we also have, of course, the free trade agreements, which is also pushed for very quickly a lot now with the EU, with the critical raw materials as an argument. And then of course we have the budget cuts on the health sector or education. It also affects the possibility for people to actually live in rural areas and contribute to food production. So what we try to do, we both in our very small organization. I know maybe I talk too much now, but I'm very soon done. Both in our small organization and globally, we try to build stronger this concrete, real solidarity with our sister organizations. And of course, it is the sister organization that is affected that is taking the lead on how this should be carried out. For example, if it's sharing information or collecting funds for Cuba or going for voluntary work in Palestine, it's the different ways that we try to build a stronger organization, and also of course collaborate with other organizations, because of course we need each other also outside of the Lavia campus. Just some quick thoughts, but thank you all to all your speeches. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. And what is very necessary for more middle-class type of organization is to understand that small farmers live in the reality. They don't choose to work with an issue. It's part of their daily life. And that's why I think one have to be very understanding of this different kind of character of the movement, sort of. Secondly, precisely what Anuradha spoke about makes organizations like Via Campesina especially important. I've been cooperating with Via Campesina in Sweden and in Brazil and globally many years, and they see these things, the structural level on things, very early on. And I was just now part of World Social Forum discussions, which will be in Benin in August. And they talk about decolonialization, but in North and South country terms. But actually, you have had that domestically in Sweden very clearly, and quite for certain in Turkey as well, I guess. That the colonialization is not only between countries, it's also inside country. And it was actually addressed precisely like that 150 years ago in a lot of struggles against the extractivism of the big companies in the south of Sweden. And how to connect these struggles, that's where I think we have to understand the rural economy and the realities of that as important. Now we have another group from Turkey that have exactly understood. Oh, Sergio, you are here. Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Tord. And Hello to everybody. Yes, I'm Sergio from Italy, from CGIL and the Italian peace movement too. So just briefly, I wish to share with you some reflection, or I mean, our point of view, our angle. First of all, NATO is the problem, isn't the solution, and it's time to break this taboo and state very clearly that the Atlantic Alliance as a military bloc is founded on the logic of confrontation between powers competing with one another to dominate the rest of the world. If the aim is to build relations between peoples and states where peace, prosperity, and security are real and lasting, there must be a policy of cooperation and mutual trust. There can be no competition, no domination, or opposing military blocs. So we need to empty the military arsenals and eliminate nuclear weapons. We need to replace deterrence with cooperation. We need to convert the military industrial complex into an economic, financial, and industrial system, moving from a war economy to an economy of peace. So the European Union and its member state must make a choice to carry on as before, allowing political decisions to be taken by a military alliance, or to say enough is enough, and to change course, to change route, to resume the path set out in Helsinki and build a Europe founded on rights, freedoms, justice, cooperation, and solidarity, which rejects war and the use of weapons. A force for peace within a system of international relations and norms that are anchored in the only possible framework, the United Nations, but reformed and with no countries able to make a veto on international law. Finally, I confirm that on 14th of June, we, the Italian trade union, CGIL, but other European trade union, we will be with the European campaign against rearmament, Stop Rearm Europe, that we are part from the Italian branch, calling for Europe-wide mobilization organized by and involving peace networks, trade unions, and student movement to demand an end to all wars and to reiterate the need to halt the arms race and to invest in peace, healthcare, education, decent work, and cooperation. This will be an initial call to launch a permanent mobilization in every European city. I mean, a decentralized European mobilization. No more wars, and we fight for a nuclear-free Europe. Thanks.
Thank you. That fitted very well into the program. Lovely. But then we have a next speaker from Turkey again, and this time Sezgin Zari from the Militarization Hub towards the Climate Summit. So that's a sort of a group that tries to link the issues. We are most interested about what you have to say and what is going on. Please take the floor.
Thank you for having me here and for all the participants and speakers for their insights. I want to start with the presentation and to share you my screen and how we are going on at the moment with our organization against the NATO Summit and beyond. I am Sezgin Sarı. I'm from Turkey and a conscientious objector, and I'm here representing the anti-militarism working group under People's Climate Summit organization. I will introduce our plans towards the NATO Summit and beyond. Anti-militarism working group, we are organizing a peace summit before the NATO Summit in Ankara. in July, and together with other working groups under People's Climate Summit umbrella and with international participation. Turkey's current military budget is 30 billion USD, and it has the second largest army in NATO by manpower. And this is mostly due to mandatory military service. Consensus objection in Turkey is not recognized, and objectors face lifelong prosecution and civil death. And Turkey is the only member state in the Council of Europe that refuses to recognize consensus objection to military service and offers no alternative. At the Peace Summit, we want to highlight these issues, these topics against increased military spending and ongoing conflicts in wider region. We demand the budget for the people, peace and energy democracy, conscious objection and rights, climate justice, and we want to form a global transformative action against militarism. We planned the summit in Ankara for 2 days. The first day is dedicated to solidarity with Palestine, and we are organizing events, and we aim to make a street demonstration also in that day. And the second day is for the conference. We will have 4 sessions during the day and cover the topics you see on the screen: current conflicts and alternative security concepts, ecological impacts of militarization, conflicts and energy imperialism, ecological destruction and displacement due to conflicts, and consensus objection in Turkey and across the world. The speakers are not assigned yet, and we invite the movements working on anti-militarism, ecology, and refugees to participate in the program with their presentation and speakers if possible. We have arranged 3 venues in Ankara for this program. You see it in the green circle. One is for the conference on the 5th. One is for concerts and events during the weekend, and one is to accommodate those who come from abroad to Turkey. And they're all in walking distance to each other, like in a 3-kilometer radius. And after the Peace Summit in Ankara, we will continue with the organization of the Climate Summit in November in Antalya. Turkey this year hosts 2 important summits. One is NATO Summit and the other is COP31. And so after the NATO Summit, we want to bring together movements from international and intersectional struggle for global representation at the Climate Summit in Antalya. And the Anti-NATO Summit will be a milestone for that movement. Here you see the working groups under the People's Climate Summits, and we include organizations and individuals from different areas of struggle, from anti-militarism to ecology, and from labor to LGBTI movements. And here is the organizational structure of the movement. We try to keep it international and intersectional, which is important to organize the People's Climate Summits. And so I want to keep it short, and this is only to provide an introduction to what we are doing at the moment, and hope to see you all like either in Istanbul, thanks to the NATO platform, or in Ankara in 4 to 5 July, and also in Antalya for the People's Climate Summit beyond COP31. So please feel free to ask any questions to me, and you can contact us via the email below for participation as a speaker or just in attendance. And the call and other documents will be ready at the end of this month, and we will participate at the Bonn Climate Camp this June. So hope to see you there. If anybody, if we can see anybody there also from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sezgin. This is one more tendency, clearly, that the movements start to converge. And on the one hand, such things takes time, as Pia stated, but it's also so that sometimes things go quickly because of the circumstances. So it's interesting now that you have this process in Turkey, and that is a really key country. I've been there myself, and there was many environmentalists at the European Social Forum gathering there in 2010. But there was peace activists, solidarity activists, leftists, all kind of groups in your country. the thing is that I'm not being able to reach out to Olga Karach. Olga Karach is a human rights defender. She's sentenced 13 times in Belarus for being a terrorist. She's also claimed to be independent in a way that is not so welcome in the West, because she's very clear on defending human rights without double standards. And she's very much into linking the issues as well, but I cannot reach her. But as far as I see, I think that the Mariana we have here is Mariana Rodriguez. If that is the case, we have a good final speaker. Is it so that Mariana
Very sorry, she's left the call.
Oh, what a pity. Okay, Mariana is interesting to mention in relation to what Cechin talked about. She is from Climaximo in Portugal, and they have been making a book about the need of linking the issues. And their final conclusion after visiting 10 cities in Europe was the need to address militarism. And they talk about 4 present crises. We have the prior crisis with the Palestine genocide. We have the attack on Latin America, and this was what they stated already in December before the attacks on Venezuela and Cuba, the recent ones. And they also talk about that the middle class get upset about Trump, and finally how the armament takes away the economic resources for people, which means that this year is a very special year, a crisis bringing all the issues together.